Greetings and welcome back to room 303 in our talks with Walt, as we are calling our readings through the deathbed edition of Walt Whitman's Leaves of Grass. We turn now to an amazing little poem, Unfolded Out of the Folds. This is poem number 24 of the 38 of Autumn Rivulets. We've commented in earlier lectures, autumn of it related to the old, rivulets of it related to the new. This will be a celebration, often read this way, of womanhood. Certainly that will be what Whitman's playing around with, but the poem is an extremely controversial poem. It is, along with Sleepers, a poem that will be banned. And we'll have more to say about that here in a moment. Now, our assumptions are that you've been following our stuff at learnstrong.net, down that left-hand side, Talks with Walt, our playlist. And you've been working with inscriptions and that first word come, which we're going to come to here as an invitation word, all the way up through and including a set of introductory comments for Autumn Rivulets. And then we just finished with To a Pupil. Now, let's turn to our Nortons to just get a bit of background information here about this one. This poem, we're told, first appeared in Leaves of Grass 1856 as Poem of Women, okay? In 1860-67, it was identified only by its number in Leaves of Grass cluster, the present title in Leaves of Grass 1871 and thereafter, with only slight revisions. Its emphasis on the eugenic role of women is characteristic. Originally, this poem actually followed the very original Song of Myself, which was called something else. So it's fascinating to think that this is a poem that actually would follow a poem like Song of Myself and the 52nd passage. Now, you'll maybe remember in our study with Roots and Leaves Themselves Alone that Whitman said, buds to be unfolded on the old terms. And as we look at this poem and the unfolding of this poem, we're going to see this as a powerful word picture. Now, 14 times in this poem, the word unfolded gets used. So we're going to pay attention to the ways in which that happens. You'll maybe remember the word folds from I Sing the Body Electric, passage 9. Unfolded out of the folds of the woman, man comes unfolded and is always to come unfolded. Unfolded only out of the superbest woman of the earth is to come the superbest man of the earth. Unfolded out of the friendliest woman is to come the friendliest man. Unfolded only out of the perfect body of a woman can a man be formed of perfect body. Unfolded only out of the inimitable poems of woman can come the poems of man. Only thence have my poems come. Unfolded out of the strong and arrogant woman I love, only thence can appear the strong and arrogant man I love. Unfolded by brawny embraces from the well-muscled woman I love, only thence come the brawny embraces of the man. Unfolded out of the folds of the woman's brain come all the folds of the man's brain, duly obedient. Unfolded out of the justice of the woman, all justice is unfolded. Unfolded out of the sympathy of the woman is all sympathy. A man is a great thing upon the earth and through eternity, but every jot of the greatness of man is unfolded out of woman. First, the man is shaped in the womb. He can then be shaped in himself. Now, why the poem was banned is obviously of some interest. Obviously, if we're talking anatomically, are we talking about the folds of a certain body part that women will use to produce the birthing of a child? Obviously, we're going to have some readers who are going to have great difficulty in Whitman's day with that idea, the biological or anatomical reading of this poem. But I think there's more going on. I think there were a large number of people who were deeply concerned about how Whitman is going to make the argument that out of the woman comes the man. And of course, if you are making that argument, you are somehow calling into question the authority, the power of masculinity in general. Notice the dance then that Whitman will play here. And in fact, it's been pointed out, there's a lot of different types of unfolding in this poem. It's a brilliantly constructed poem. I'm quite blown away by just how he tries to pull this off. Again, the repetition of the word unfolded, I think, almost works like a mantra of a kind, right? Let's go through it really quickly. Notice again, out of the folds, unfolded out of the folds of the woman. Of course, we can be speaking here literally. We can obviously be speaking metaphorically, no question. Man comes, and again, I told you about this use of his word, this word come, from the very first word of Leaves of Grass, the deathbed edition, and from there on, it's like, as we've pointed out, how regularly the power of that word happens. Notice, he puts woman and man next to each other with no punctuation in between them. out of the folds of the woman, man comes unfolded and is always to come unfolded. Now, of course, we're speaking both evolutionarily, biologically, but I think Whitman is well going to talk about artistically, symbolically, and obviously intellectually, cognitively. Unfolded only out of the superbus woman. You'll maybe want to pay attention to this later when we get to Noon to Starry Night. A riddle song, we'll play with that superbus word one other time. Superbus woman of the earth is to come the superbus man of the earth. This idea of superb perfection, we've seen this already a number of times in Leaves of Grass. The ideal, we might say, speaking obviously very platonically. Unfolded out of the friendliest woman is to come the friendliest man. Now you could make the argument here that this is the celebration of motherhood, and of course Whitman himself celebrating his mother a number of times, as we've commented in Leaves of Grass, Whitman his person, and the way in which he wanted to argue that he was who he was because predominantly of his mother more than his father, of course, as we said, having some issues at times with his father. Unfolded only, notice his use of the word only several times in this poem, unfolded only out of the perfect body, so notice we go from superbus to perfect body, of a woman can a man be formed of perfect body. Now, no question, and the word eugenics always comes up here, because this idea of the perfect body, what are we talking about? And what does Whitman mean? Well, he's obviously celebrated the physical. I think the body electric will be referenced here a couple of times at the end of this poem. No question the physical perfection, but clearly for Whitman, it has a whole lot more to do with inspiration as he moves to the next one, unfolded out of the inimitable poems. And by the way, you'll maybe remember this from Pomenak's Starting I Fly, the inimitable songs. Here it's the inimitable poems, right? The most unique of woman. And here, of course, some readers have pointed out, in other words, all poetry somehow begins with the muse, obviously in the Greek tradition, and in the American tradition, well, let's just say what it is. The greatest, maybe, poet of them all is Emily Dickinson. It's fun to read in between the lines here as he's playing this game. Inimitable poems of woman can come the poems of men. And then in parenthetics, just make his point clear, only thence have my poems come. Now that's fascinating, because there's always been this debate about the literary antecedents of Whitman. And where did he get so many of his ideas poetically and otherwise, rhetorically, structurally, for this amazing collection of poems that he put together? He argues that it all began, first of all, with an amazing woman. Notice he'll continue, unfolded out of the strong and arrogant woman. I love his use of the word arrogant. You'll remember this from Song Myself 40, right? Arrogant republics. By arrogant here, he doesn't mean like in a nasty way. He means confident. That would be our word today, right? Only thence can appear the strong and arrogant man I love. Notice it's I love. Unfolded by brawny embraces, and this word brawny takes us back to Song of Myself 41, brawny limbs. And again, the idea of embraces. And the idea, of course, that this can be read sexually, and this may be one more reason why the poem was banned by any number of folks. That is to say, whoa, we're doing a little bit too much sexual reading here going on. And so here it is, brawny embraces from the well-muscled woman. And it's an interesting phrase, well-muscled woman. Could we be talking about, kind of sexual endurance? Are we talking, what does this mean? Well, Whitman obviously is going to create a lot of controversy with this idea. I love, only thence come the brawny embraces of the man. Now, reading this poem in isolation, it is controversial. Reading it at the point where we read it in the deathbed edition, we go, oh, I totally understand the game that he's played, because he's been playing this kind of literal, figurative game all the way through Leaves of Grass. Unfolded out of the folds of the woman's brain. Now this is fascinating, given of course the idea of the folds of the brain, right? Now we're working with a different level of anatomy, right? Come all the folds of the man's brain, and then duly obedient. In other words, there seems to be some suggestion here, almost evolutionarily, of DNA and the idea of DNA. In other words, in large measure, if there could be a photograph of you and set beside your great-great-great-great-great-grandma, which obviously there can't be a photograph, but if there was, a lot of geneticists say you'd probably look a lot like, and even the voice sound a lot like maybe your great-great-great-great-grandma, which is fascinating. Unfolded out of the justice. Now this is interesting, of the woman. All justice is unfolded. Takes us back to obviously our study of Plato's Republic, and especially Republic 1 with the question of what is justice. We've given full lectures at learnstrong.net on that one. Unfolded out of the sympathy of the woman. Go back to Song of Myself 48, and to walk without sympathy is to walk to your own funeral dressed in your shout, is all sympathy. A man, now to finish, this is the like coda of the poem. A man is a great thing upon the earth and through eternity, but, in other words, it's like he tips his hat to the idea that men are important on the earth, but every jot, and it's interesting his use of the word jot, it'll take us back to our study of A Woman Waits for Me, not a jot less than I am, you'll remember, right, in A Woman Waits for Me. But every jot of the greatness of man is unfolded out of the woman. So I find this remarkable that he's going to go there. He's going to say, whatever greatness there is in man, it's all because of the greatness in women. First, he says, the man is shaped, taking us back to Song of Myself 37. Go look at how he uses that word there. In the woman, he can then be shaped in himself. And again, obviously, he's also borrowing from this idea, that's a somewhat biblical idea from the book of Proverbs, of woman being somehow represented as wisdom, Sophia. And so you can see inspiration is being played around here with, and not just physical, we're not just talking about physical birth, but metaphysical, intellectual birth, inspiration, we might say, and all of that. At 2a, what are we going to say about a poem like this? Well, obviously, all of life is interdependent. That's his argument, right? And he's going to be making this argument in, hello, the title of the poem collection is Leaves of Grass, right? At 2b, I love the repetition of unfolded, as I said. I love these themes that are played out here that are kind of overlapping. That is to say, the notion of the perfect man and woman, or the ideal perfect man and woman, is one tension or one theme. And then the other that's interfolded is obviously the whole notion of poetic inspiration of the perfect poet. As he will say, I'm hopeful for the poet that will be the offspring of these perfect individuals. And obviously by perfect we're talking ideal, or ideally suited to the environment of their time, we might say. At 3a, how we're going to relate this, I think of Ulysses' line, or Tennyson's line in Ulysses, I am part of all that I have met, yet all experiences and art went through gleams that untraveled world whose margin fades forever and forever when I move. We're products of this. Obviously, there's so many poems that come to mind here as well. A Child Went Forth comes immediately to mind. I like to think about Freud's celebration of mothers, as he made the argument that there can be no real development in the masculine, in the male, unless there's a strong and a supportive mother. He always arguing that that's what he had. Finally, at 3b, I'll just ask you to own a poem like this. How do you read this poem? I mean, do you concentrate at the anatomical and the biological? Are you more inclined to read this as somehow metaphoric and metaphysical? Do you find this a controversial poem? I mean, some readers still today find this a controversial poem. I love that we're this far into Leaves of Grass and we're still kind of being shocked and, dare I say it, blown away by some of these poems. Thank you.